Are you ready to create a life that's intentional and dynamic? Welcome to the Intentional Spirit with your host, Reverend Temple Hayes.
Welcome, everyone, and I'm so thrilled that you are with us today. I love this show. I have met some of the most fascinating people being part of this show for over 12 years, just leaders and teachers and people that are willing to be bold and brave and share their stories. And our guest is none other today, Joe McQuillen, in that it's a story of loss and tragedy, and tragically losing one of his sons in 2016. And yet it's a story of resurrection, rebirth, how Joe has taken this story and brought it to the forefront. I really feel like what people want to hear the most, Joe, is that, something is ongoing, that though physically we don't see someone, it's not the end if we're open to that in our hearts. So Joe McQuillen, welcome to the Intentional Spirit. I adore your work, and I'm so glad you're here today.
Thanks, Temple. Thanks a lot. I laugh when we call this New Age. In the 12th century, the Persian poet Rumi said that goodbyes are for those who love with their eyes, for those who love with their hearts and souls. There's no such thing as separation. Mm-hmm. And so, that hasn't changed. I just needed to get my arms around the fact that there is no such thing as separation and figure out what that meant. And that's been my journey since 2016.
Now, did you have any, I know that you're one of 10 children, correct?
Right. Yeah. Youngest of 10. Irish Catholic family.
You're the youngest. And so that's a whole radio show right there. But that being said,
that's a whole clown show right there.
Right. Did you have in your current time with your family, and you had 5 kids, correct?
I have three.
It's 3, excuse me. Did you have any religious or spiritual affiliation when Christopher died?
I raised Irish Catholic, church and mom was pretty religious. I went to 13 years of Catholic school. My freshman year in college was at a Catholic school. And I think it gave me a base, a foundation. I'm not a religious guy, Temple. I'm a very spiritual guy. I believe strongly in God, and I believe in He's the creator, and you can call him the source or Yahweh or Great Spirit, whatever. The same. He's the same fellow. He's the person that put this whole scheme in place, and we all go back to him. Now, so I will say I had a spiritual and a religious foundation. I will also tell you that it wasn't really part of my day-to-day life before Christopher transitioned. I mean, Christopher was, he was baptized, and he had a first communion, and he was confirmed. But I don't think he felt a strong sense of religious. But I think he was also became in his late teens pretty spiritual. It's funny. It's kind of a dichotomy. Guys like him and I, little wild colonial boys, but still have that connection to kindness and love and a belief in something bigger than us, which I think he had, so I will tell you that my belief, believe it or not, in God after Christopher transitioned after the accident was tenfold stronger. And I'll explain that because it's a phenomenal story. I probably should go back and just at least let you know, just your listeners know that what happened, what put all of this into events. I'll start with that. I certainly don't look like a guy that would quote Haruki Murakami, but I will. And he said, once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure, in fact, whether the storm is really over. One thing is certain: when you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. That's what storms are all about. So for anybody who's lost somebody, specifically, tragically, for anybody who's lost a child, you're cast in this monster storm. And hopefully you're not the same person to walk out when the storm has subsided. It never passes.
Right.
Anybody who said that time heals all wounds never lost a kid. You know, grief is your constant companion. You just learn you make peace with it, and you learn how to live with it, and you acquire tools to deal with it. In 2016, excuse me, January, Chris was home for college. He was 21 years old, taking special ed. He was teaching. He wanted to be a special ed teacher. And he was home, and a bunch of his buddies all got together, a dozen of them, guys and gals, and decided to spend the last night of their Christmas vacation at a friend's lake house in Lake Beulah, Wisconsin, which is about an hour and a half. I live on the North Shore of Chicago in a place called Winnetka. I've been there for 30 years, 27 years. And I bought the house right after Christopher was born. And we bought the house after he was born. So they went up there to kick up their heels, and they the next day would be Sunday. We were going to watch a Buffalo Bills game together. I grew up in Buffalo, and then the following go back to school the following Monday. So they went up, and Sally and I were kind of relieved that they were going to go up in Wisconsin in this bucolic setting, right? How much trouble can you get into up there instead of all going down in the city of Chicago and kicking up their heels? So they went up there and. And like I said, a dozen of them. And, they went to a local pub and drank and shot pool and played darts and listened to music and took the party back to the lake house. And at 3:00 in the morning, Christopher and three of his friends went out and saw a boathouse and did what 21-year-old boys did. They walked in, layered clothing, unlaced Timberland boots, snoot full of alcohol. 4 of them jumped in a 3-man canoe, paddled out. None of them made it back. I got a call at about 11:30 that said, or a text that said, Mr. McHugh, Chris, and 3 friends are missing. So I jumped in the Jeep, grabbed my Labrador, put on some boots and a coat, and literally Temple thought I was going to go up there and find him in some co-ed's house or a boathouse, sleeping off the night before's revelry. And halfway up, I got a call from the uncle of Scotty, who owned the house, whose parents owned the house, said it's no longer a search, but a recovery, that all 4 boys had drowned.
Oh.
You kind of go black, you go blank, you go dark. I think it's shock. I'm looking out this window of my office right now. This used to be Christopher's bedroom. It's my home office. And I do a lot of my writing here, and I can see myself standing when I opened the door to this guy's house and looked out this picture window and saw all the rescue boats on the lake and divers and lights and flashing lights and corners of parents in one corner crying and kids in the other corner crying. Flash backward about 16 years before. This is the synchronicity that all plays through this whole story, and probably everybody's story. I had on a whim, a spiritual whim or something, went and saw a medium, and the reading was kind of uneventful and ineffective. And until we got to the end, and she said, your dad's here, and he's telling you railroad, and he's holding a caboose. Now, if you look over my shoulder, there's a railroad lantern on my bookcase, because we were a railroad family. My uncle, my grandfather my dad worked 40 years on the railroad. All five of the boys, 4 of my brothers and myself, all worked on the railroad when we were in college. So we were a railroad family. So him saying that, the impact was, oh my God, you can connect with people. No answers to the universe, no lottery numbers. He just let me know he was there. So 16 years later, I'm finishing this drive up to Lake Beulah, and I thought, wait a minute, if my old man is somewhere that he can reach back to me, then my kid's with him, because that's how my family rolled. We were a clan. We still are, big family, still very close. So I thought, okay, let's wrap up whatever I got to do here, and then see if I can find how to connect with my son, who's got to be with my dad, and they got to be on the other side. And that started my journey. Now you and I laughed earlier, I've been a car dealer, I'm a mortgage broker. Look at me. I am not exactly a naive guy, right? So I really figured if all this metaphysical info was BS. Let's cross it off the list, but let's figure it out.
Yeah.
And that began my search. But I'll tell you, sorry about that. The first 3 days after Chris transitioned, they wouldn't let me identify his body. They make you identify a picture. And I was, just crushed, and called his mom, and the heartbreak of that. And my son wrote a chapter in the second book called "The Firsts Are the Worst," and talked about the noise he heard coming from his mom when she found out her firstborn was gone. And it's gut wrenching. So I would get home after a day, after coming back, arranging for the body to be returned, finding, mortuary, finding caskets, stones, receptions, masses, readings, suits for the boy, and all that stuff, and I would hit my knees every day, exhausted. Now I'm 36 years sober. I was a wild kid, and grateful to have, Vegas odds weren't on me making 65, and I get on my knees and I thank God for my family and my sobriety. But I'd say, we're not good, God, you and me. You took my kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I did this for 3 nights. And on the third night, I got a feedback download that said, I didn't take your son. His free will and recklessness caused him to come home early, and I welcomed him. But remember, I lost a son too. So it was at that moment that I knew God wasn't the protagonist in this play. He wasn't moving me around like chess pieces or making me pay for past sins by taking my son. Things happened that caused my son to cross over, and he was there for him. And then he was there for me. So my relationship with God shifted completely that moment, that I knew he was the guy holding me up while I got all this stuff done. Right after that, I called the medium that I'd talked to so many years before, and she'd relocated to Arizona. And she told me she connected with Chris, and she was a little amazed because it was pretty early after his transitioning. And she told me that things that I wouldn't know until I got the coroner's report about what happened, alcohol, drugs, whatever. And so I knew it was real. I believed in it. And I had another session with her a little while after that. And like a good therapist, she said, look, we can't do this all the time.
Yeah.
He's doing stuff, you're doing stuff. Let's put a little distance, and her and I remain friends to this day. I was out in Arizona a couple of years ago and looked her up. And so I wanted to take it a step farther, so I read a great book by the author Bob Olson, who was an investigator and a PI, and was kind of a skeptic, and ended up being a convert, and a wonderful book by John Holland, said Bridging Both Realms. I went and saw mediums. I went to spirit circles. I went to see presentations by some of these people. Saw some Rebecca Rosen, just amazing. I saw some world-class all-star people.
Sure.
And Chris came through for everyone. Never disappointed, Temple. Never disappointed.
He always just came right through, right?
You know what? It's amazing how he's come through. He's come through to the point where he came through to Rebecca Rosen in a 250 person auditorium. She walked up and said, who's got a boy that died at 21 or drowned at 21 or 20 or 21 in a canoe accident? And I raised my hand. He goes, what's the connection to country music? I said, we both loved it. He goes, what about the song Live Like You Were Dying? And that's a song that impacts me. And we actually cover it as a band at a golf outing we do in his honor. And it's kind of the central core. She said, what about a dog named Cooper? And Cooper, the band is called Frat Dog, named after this dog who was in Christopher's fraternity. And Christopher would do a blog with this dog, and his name was Cooper. It's like nobody knew any of this. This
Right.
isn't stuff that anybody knew outside the family. So all of these reinforcements, these validations by these amazing mediums, and the information that I picked up by researching, I think a lot of people want it to just come to them. but you got to do a little work here. You got to put a little effort in if you want to connect. So I'll tell you, it was the June 30th of 2016. So about 6 months after Christopher transitioned, right? We were, I decided that I wanted to see a medium in person. I wanted to look into the eyes of somebody who was looking at my son. And at this point, I'm a believer. I believe, right? There's a little difference between believing and knowing, because soon I go to a Lord nowhere. And I had moved his grave. It's kind of funny. I had moved his grave over one plot. So like it is now, it's -4 degrees in the Chicago suburbs. And like it is in January 2013, there was snow on the ground. So we picked a number of plots that we were going to have together. And the woman asked, where do you want to bury it? And I said, well, the tree is nice. Let's do it on the end. Well, when the snow melted, he was buried next to another couple. It looked like he was their kid. I was livid. So I held my breath, stamped through a few things, and wrote a check, mostly wrote a check. And they moved him over one plot. And I'm going to occupy the plot he was in. That's not, it's nobody's but ours. So here it is, June of 2016. So the ground, they couldn't re-intern him until the ground was soft. So the dirt around his grave was loose now because they had moved him over. So I'd ordered some shamrock seeds from Amazon. Now, nobody knew I ordered these shamrock seeds. I'm not hiding ordering shamrock seeds. I just never told anybody. I didn't tell my wife. Sure. She just didn't come up, right? And so I was going to go see Andrew that later that morning. So I decided to stop at the grave, and I did two things. I went and brought the shamrock seeds because I was going to go to the grave and plant them, which I did. And shamrocks come up to this grave to this day in the spring. And then I picked up this leather bracelet out of my dresser. That was a bracelet Christopher gave me when we were when he was 5 or 6, and we were in Disney World, and it says Dad on it. And he was so proud of that. And I wore it that weekend, put it in the dresser where you have the handprint and the race car that he made a bank out of, and all the other things.
Right, yes.
And didn't pay much attention. Well, that morning on a whim, I just reached into the dresser and pulled it out and put it on. And went to the grave, planted the shamrock seeds, and went and saw Andrew Anderson. And it turns out I looked him up on a website, which, remember I told you about the Bob Olson book?
Right.
What I didn't realize until I was actually almost done with my book, that the website that I looked him up on was Bob Olson's website, where it's regional and rated and all that. And I pulled this guy's name, what I thought was out of a hat, but it was really referred by Bob Olson. So thanks, Bob. And so I went out there, and he said, bring a picture, Andrew said. He didn't know my last name, didn't know anything. You don't give him a credit card, you go out there. And he said, bring a couple pictures of who you want to connect with. So I brought some pictures of Chris, with friends and with a pal, and arms around, and friends and me. And he said, okay, look. He said, this picture's great. He said, Tommy Bahama shirt. He looked like he was having a ball. He said, but there was a sad side, a dark side. We knew that, and we were concerned that sometimes there was a depression and alcohol abuse and all those things that scare us as parents. And he said, but I want you to know, he these pictures are happy. And a lot of his life was this way, but some wasn't. I said, yeah, we know that. He said, also, something happened. He said, what was your anniversary last night? Well, the anniversary the night before was our 25th wedding anniversary, Sally and mine. Of course, we didn't celebrate an anniversary. We just buried a kid 6 months before. So, but he said, your whole family came together to acknowledge that on the other side. And he said, and how many members do you have on the other side? And I said, I've got 5 left. He's siblings. He said, no, you got 1. And I said, Andrew, I'm glad you're a medium, and but I know how many people on the other side. I got 5.
Right.
You got
right.
1.
I know my life, right?
He said you got 1. Well, what happened in 1956? My uncle was married to my aunt, killed his wife in a car accident. My mom and dad took in those 5 cousins and raised them as brothers and sisters of ours. So that's why we had 10 kids. But of those siblings, only 1 was left on this side. So I'm arguing with Andrew when the truth of the matter is I only had one blood sibling. Now the other ones, believe me, in spirit and love and everything else, they're my siblings. But as far as, genealogy and blood, I've only had one, and he was right. So I was like, okay, score one for the medium. And then he said, Chris says, acknowledges you're wearing a bracelet he gave you. Now, it was exactly that. I had stuff out like here under my cuff. I pull it up and there's the bracelet that he gave me. He said, Chris acknowledges you were at his grave planting something really recently. And that was that morning. I planted the shamrock seeds. And that was the moment, Temple. That was the moment that I went from believing to knowing. I literally thought in my head, buckle up. This is going to get wild. But I knew then that there was another side. My boy was over there. My family is over there. And it's accessible if I try to figure it out. If I learn a few keys, if I focus on this. And I've never looked back. Not once since have I doubted the knowledge that I gained there, in 2016.
And it's so amazing. And that's, in the beginning, your story is so profound. And, we definitely wanted to have you on the show again because you now have another book. Those of you that are listening, the first book was My Search for Christopher on the Other Side by Joe McQuillen. And the second book is We're Not Done Yet, Pop, My Lessons from the Other Side. You can go to Amazon.com. You can also go to joemcquinlan.net and access it. If you're not following the spelling or whatever, you can go to my Facebook page or Instagram and follow to get to the show or watch it later on YouTube or on live audio through Unity Online. But one of the questions I asked you when we first started I asked you, did you have any religious or spiritual affiliation? And because that there are so many people, especially now in our society, that surprisingly and shockingly, the number 2 cause of death with ages 10 to 34 years old, Joe, is suicide, second leading cause of death. And so my point is, to all of you that are tuning in, there are those of you that know someone that lived through, like Joe said, the shock of the being anesthetized to understand that your child has gone before you. And to know that you're not required to have any religious or spiritual affiliation for this kind of magic to happen to you, if you will, because what Joe's saying, what I hear him saying, what I think is so powerful for all of you listening, he just stayed open. And that's, and through that discovery, yes, the connections to something greater than himself were kicking in. But I value that about you, Joe. And to me, that's an intentional spirit story.
Right.
Because you did stay sober. You didn't spend the rest of your life hating some kind of entity. You didn't say, I will never do these things again. You didn't make your other children pay for your loss. You opened and you stayed open. And to me, that's one of the best teachings that we can ever give. And that's what we believe as intentional people, is that when tragedy knocks on your door, don't close down, open up in time. And I applaud you for that.
Well, thanks, Temple. And maybe if my discovery led to the fact that it was void and there was nothing, maybe I'd have taken a different track, right? A different tack. But the bottom line is what presented to me was I wasn't ready to accept the world without my son. Right. And I'm talking the world, not on this side. I'm talking the big picture world.
Right. Exactly.
And so I was really intense about finding a key to allow me to connect with him. Right. And once again, if I was wrong, if this is all hokey BS, let's figure something out. Maybe I do, start drinking again. Who knows? Right. But it was early on revealed to me that there was something more. There was a wonderful book called The Shack. And in The Shack, and I encourage anybody, and it's a good movie too, by the way. There's a guy lost his daughter in a very bad way. Not that there's any good way, but in a very bad way. And he was in the presence of God And God said to him, just because I work incredible good out of unspeakable tragedies doesn't mean I orchestrate the tragedies. You know, nobody pulled the rug out from under me. This wasn't a cosmic joke or a trick. It happened. You know, Renee or Teresa Russo, who wrote The Happy Medium, and I read her book early on. And one of the things she talks about was that you know, there are some exit points or Kim Russo's name. There's exit points in our lives, and I had known nothing of the metaphysical. I little bit spiritual bent, maybe a mustard seed of faith, but that was it. Nothing about the metaphysical. And it's not that I doubted it. I just didn't care. It just didn't go into my daily routine, right? So Kim Russo wrote in her book, The Happy Medium, that the third exit point, the third is usually the last, you know. So Christopher.
One moment, Joe, on that thought, because we're going to break now. Join me at templehayes.com or unityonlineradio.org, and we'll be right back following this short.
Welcome back to The Intentional Spirit with Reverend Temple Hayes.
Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for being with us as you are so moved. I know I am, as I'm talking with Joe McQuillen today, and we're talking about the dynamics of, his ongoing relationship with his son, Christopher, who died tragically on January 3rd, 2016, in a canoe accident, along with 3 other friends. And with Joe on a journey of having an open heart and an open mind, would find himself seeking and being led to seek the right people, the right mediums, the right psychics that could tell him a story and share the energy that his son was still very much communicating with him. Joe, it's so beautiful to have you. You're such a wonderful human. And you were starting to tell a story before we went to break, and we had to cut you off a bit. So take it from there, please.
Yeah, you know, I was talking. Kim Russo wrote a book, and I early on, and I still do. I get anything I can. I download it. I love listening to when I drive. And Kim Russo wrote a book called The Happy Medium about her experiences. And there's some wonderful books out there, and that's one of them. And there's some books that are tough to read, you know, and there's some books that I don't believe. But Kim Russo's, and they're very few and far between, by the way. Kim Russo's book was amazing. And she had just talked about exit points. You know, now Christopher flipped a pickup truck on his way. He was working on a ranch in Arizona, and it looked like a tin can, crushed tin can. He walked away with a sprained wrist. Fell down a mine shaft hiking in Havasupai, right? 100-foot mine shaft, landed on a 30-foot ledge, broke his shoulder, broke his foot, you know, and came out of there, you know. And then this was the third. And Kim Russo had mentioned in her book that the third one always ends in transitioning. And you know, it's like, why is that? And because I don't know, but you know, some of those rules we can try to figure out, and some of them won't make sense to us until we transition. So, you know, on the first anniversary of Christopher's crossing, I had been in the practice of getting up in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, coming in the room, this office right here, this bedroom of his, and meditating and lighting sage and aligning my chakras. Do I look like a guy that would light sage and candles and align my chakras? You know, but I'm that guy now, Temple.
Yes, you are. And you are essential. That's another reason that, you know, you are so essential for the message that
Yes.
you carry. And that's why we need to keep getting it out there, because
Right.
you are by far an extremely successful individual in the car dealership business and
Yes.
mortgage writer, real estate. You
Kind of a hard-nosed guy. Stopped playing hockey 2 years ago, right? So Chris tells me all the time in our sessions, you know, that you're a good ambassador, Dad, because people will believe it because the kind of guy you are.
Exactly.
You know, I'm not here. I don't have symbols. I'm not, you know, but you know, I follow the rules, you know. So he started coming to me in the first anniversary and after meditation, downloading messages, which I've followed chronologically in the first book and continued through the second. he explains what heaven's like, and behaviors, and what I learned. I should learn lessons. And it's an amazing experience to be able to sit there. And it happens to this day. Yesterday, 2 days ago, 3 o'clock in the morning, we had one of our sessions, and it's always fresh. The amazing thing is, Temple, he said to me, I'd closed my computer. I always have two screens because I work out of here sometimes too. And so I closed the computer. So the main screen goes black. Middle of the meditation, the screen started flickering and going on, going off, going on, then going off. And he said, look, Dad, I can do things on my side like that computer screen. He said, corrected and said, we can do things like that on the other side to help. So don't be afraid to ask for help, and have more faith that we're going to help. So it's like, oh my God, they do intervene. They do jump in when they can, and I mean, there was fresh outlook. He told me that when I cross, it's like being in the woods and stepping across the stream. He said, Pop, I can't bring you across. You've got to step over by yourself, but then I'll be there. I mean, he just told me what's going to happen when I transition, when I die, when I cross over. That's, now the thing is, Temple, here's the deal as I see it. I'm giving this amazing insight. At least twice a month, we have this. Every time I go to a medium, I get amazing feedback. I get amazing messages from him, spot on. If I had a swing and a miss, once or twice, at most. And I always equate it to like really good chefs. There's good chefs. There's really good chefs. There's cooks, right? There's fry cooks. They all make food. Some are just a little better than others, so find or coaches, a golf coach, a hockey coach. Sometimes you connect with that one coach. And that's what I think about mediums too. I think the charlatans are pretty much out of the business. I think it's all people devoted to spirit. And with the days of the internet and people doing, and people, evaluating your skills, those days are gone. So,
I think you're making a good point there for, people that are listening to you, Joe, is within any field, whether it's spiritual leaders, whether it's car dealerships, whether it's mortgage brokers, whether it's shamans, whether it's mediums or psychics. My advice to all of you listening is don't overgeneralize. Right. And make all of them not okay. Because there are many, many mediums and psychics and authors and teachers that are in integrity and are, coming from that place within. And I think the other part, Joe, your experience is so different than some people's, because you didn't start out calling everybody cuckoo and quacko. So you didn't create that, you were saying, I just want to talk to my son. Find me somebody that can talk to my son. And I love what you're saying, because it's very different than a medium that just stands in front of the room and says, I sense someone young that has died. Is that you? And I sense, he's got a picture in your wallet. Is that you? It's not like that. I mean, you're giving tangible. This is as you have said repeatedly in this show, nobody knew the messages. Right. Nobody knew, not even my wife knew or my children. Nobody knew. My best friend didn't know what had happened or what I ordered from Amazon. And here's somebody that is a stranger to me. And yet I know, in being a shamanic practitioner, that one of the values you brought to the table, again, is you were open, and you were open for them to hear these things. When somebody walks in and they're all closed and says, oh, I don't believe in this stuff, this is a bunch of crap. I think, as you and I are talking, I'm going, it is a co-creation, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a manifestation.
If you're close to the psychic or the medium and you think they're cuckoo, no, they're not going to be able to hear you. I find that in my work doing soul retrieval, with people that have had tragic loss and stuff like that. The ones that are open, it's amazing, the imagery that comes forth. The ones that doubt it, because it seems so simple, very little happens with them.
Somebody told me my very first interview after the first book, it was an interview for a radio station in Dallas. And the woman said, what do you tell people, the skeptics, the unbelievers? who just don't buy it, what do you tell them? I said, tell them change the channel. I don't care. You know what? I'm not trying to sell you anything, but what I do know is that I have some experience, strength, and hope that I can share with some parent who lost a kid and thinks it's over, thinks the connection's over. Now, I will tell you, Temple, I would trade all this metaphysical knowledge and I would trade all of this experience and all of it, for a round of golf with my son, Christopher, right? In the flesh.
Of course.
I wish none of this ever happened. I would trade it all for that one day. But you can't unring that bell. That's not your choice. So it's really, what are you going to do with the information that now you have it? How are you going to live your life? I live my life two ways now. Temple, two ways. I live my life to please my God and to make my son proud. Now, as long as I live by those two tenets, do you think I can go wrong? But that's how I approach everything now. That wasn't how I approached things before January 3rd, 2016, before I walked into that storm we talked about earlier.
What sort of buy-in, Joe, do you have? Excuse me for interrupting.
Go ahead. No.
Audio or Zoom, it's not a clear pause.
Right.
How does this sit with the other two siblings? Do they have any survivor's guilt, or has Christopher been able to help them? Are they really on the same page with you and your wife on this journey?
On the second book, I write a chapter about siblings.
Okay.
It's so complex. And William wrote a very beautiful piece in it. And my 22-year-old who was 15 when his brother transitioned. And Christopher was a great son, a wonderful friend, a good teammate, a terrible student, but he wasn't a great brother. He was impatient. He was, and it was only while in college did he start to bond with his siblings. William became this great athlete. Christopher was his number one cheerleader. He loved Caroline. Caroline came home after a series or a breakup or whatever, and Christopher left the semi-formal to be here for her. So he was only then really bonding with these kids. And Caroline said to me, we were finally becoming friends, and then he left me, so the kids' journeys are different than ours and just as painful. William buys into the whole thing. Been to mediums, been told amazing things that connected, like told that he has the same tattoo on his arm that Chris did when it was covered up, and that he uses the cologne Christopher got for his last Christmas present, which he does. Caroline is starting to open up now as she's continuing a big spiritual journey. She went and decided to go to India, get certified yoga teacher. Mm-hmm. And so, everybody's grieving and growing in their own way. Yeah. So they support me 100% and they buy in. But I think part of it is Christopher took a lot of our time. He was a handful. And it's like, and mom and dad are still focused on him, even though he's gone. So there's a little bit of that. So I'm real cautious about spreading the love and making sure that they know how important they are one-on-one. And they do. They're adored. They're loved. But it's a tough position. We all focus on the parents, Helping Parents Heal, which is an amazing organization. Helping Fathers Heal, also a lot of great organization. But these siblings are they're kind of roadkill, man. They're just left on the side. So I do everything I can to just be there and support and be in awe of the people they're becoming, but it's tough. It's tough.
When I was 13, just before I started that long unconscious 15 years of wanting to drink myself to death, my cousin was 17, I was 13. And he announced in front of his church on a Sunday night that he was going to become a preacher. And somebody jumped up and said, we'll pay full scholarship for you. So my cousin Bruce jumps in the car with 3 other guys. They're going to go get pizza, something as simple as that. And a woman ran a traffic light. Oh. And in that, on an accident that I know I survived something like that several times driving their car and just being stone drunk out of my mind.
And accidents for me.
My friend Joe did too. I'm glad we waited now for us to meet and become
Oh.
brothers and sisters. We would have been in trouble. But anyway, that being said, because especially where I grew up, you didn't sit around and you didn't talk about this stuff.
Right.
You use language like, well, God doesn't give you more than you can handle and all that. And even as a cousin, I have to say, because of my connection metaphysically to spirit, I was fearful of turning 17.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to die.
Wow.
I just had it in my mind that I was going to go too. So you make a great point. And I want to invite others to go to Amazon and to Joe's website, Joe McQuillen, and get the book, We're Not Done Yet, Pop, My Lessons from the Other Side. Or if you didn't read the first book, My Search for Christopher on the Other Side. Joe and I aren't here today trying to sell you a book.
Yeah.
We're wanting you to see that there's help. There's help for all of you. There's an awakening. There's, that you don't spend the rest of your life. I've counseled many a parent, that 25, 30 years later, Joe, they're still gray. They don't have full color on their face because they're angry. They can't believe it happened to them. And they died. There's a physical death, but there's also dying while you're living.
Yeah.
And I feel your work is so essential.
Yeah. Me
To
too.
helping people wake up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's funny. I sat down after the first book with a friend of mine's cousin, and she's a good gal. And she talked about, well, what was your upbringing like? And Irish Catholic family, merged two families. It was circus people. It was so great. So much love, crazy, dysfunctional, but a lot of love. So I knew I was loved. So she gave me a quote that she wrote it down for me. And I have it on my wall. It said, "The unassailable self-confidence that comes from a childhood insulated with love." Because of that love that I had, that I knew, even when my behavior wasn't acceptable, I knew I was loved. They might not have accepted my behavior, but they knew it. So I never feared how anybody thought about anything. So people say, wow, you live in the North Shore of Chicago, aren't you a little, worried about feeling? I don't care. I don't care. Anybody outside the tribe thinks, I do care a lot about anybody who lost a child, but if this is for that guy you're talking about that walks in with his hand crossed, tell your story walking, move on, pal.
Right.
If this isn't for you, God bless you. Go find some other way to deal with your grief.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a way. And it's not contrary to any religion. It's streamlined to every religion and spirituality, because we're all talking about going to the same place, Temple. We're all going, by the way. We're all going.
Right, we're all going.
It's like if you and I were going to go to a conference in Arizona, we'd be looking up restaurants and hotels and where do we go and what's near there, right? But we're all going to the other side, and half of us, 3/4 of us, don't even focus on what that means,
We absolutely pretend it isn't happening. That's what I said in the early days of COVID. I don't know what's more surprising, COVID, which is unfortunate, or the very fact that people are terrified when it's occurred to them, oh, you could die. That's not
here's the thing. Christopher told me, he told me what the other side's like. He told me, Dad, your side's like football camp. It's fun. It's great, competitive, physically difficult, camaraderie. My side's like a beach bungalow in Maui.
Oh, wow.
Right. He said, your side's good. Mine's better. So I got to tell you.
Involved in any projects or teaching children or?
That's exactly what he does. He works with kids on the other side who are, quote, freaked out about transitioning. Mm-hmm. And now I'm told by another wonderful Tony Russo, who's no relation to Kim Russo, is another great medium, that he actually intervenes on some children on this side who need, spiritual calming. She said her daughter receives, can only go to school. She'd go to school and throw up on the way to school because of anxiety every day. She said now she doesn't because Chris walks her to school.
Oh,
so
God.
So how amazing is that? So I got to tell you, I live this wonderful life, and I'm not done. I'm not ready to go. Right. I've got work to do. I got parents to help. I got lessons to learn. I got children that can finish raising. They're in their 20s, but they still need some raising. I have a wonderful wife. I've got this amazing group of friends. But if God touched me on the shoulder and said, pal, tomorrow's the day, pack,
Pack.
I'm okay. I'm okay because I live, I get to be with him on the other side, God and Chris, and I know what it's like. The term bliss keeps coming up, BLISS. When people describe and use the term bliss, it's hard to look away from that one. So I know that although I'm not ready to leave, I'm not holding on with both hands. My sister, who I adored, she transitioned February 6, 2019. She was Christopher's godmother, one of my favorite people in the whole wide world. He loved her. They were close, trusted. And before she was dying of cancer, before she died, it was the week before she transitioned, she said to me, honey, you gave me the greatest gift. I read your book and I'm not afraid to die. A year later on my birthday, I went and saw a medium and said, your son Chris is here, of course, but so is your sister, Marcia. And she said, did she call you Joey? I said, yeah. She said, the message is, honey, thank you for giving me the greatest gift. How do you deny that, Temple? How do you not know you're in God's grace doing what he wants you to do when you get a message from somebody like that?
No doubt. And it's just such a fascinating story. It just keeps humbling you more and more, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so humbled, and even when I tell you, these are two of the best books on the metaphysical that I've ever read, and I wrote them, but really Chris wrote them, right? He was there with every keystroke, every paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
Those are his words, that I was the channel for and grateful to be.
We have a movie coming.
I think we probably do.
I think we need a movie on this.
There is we did a, I got to tell you, it's funny. We had a screenplay written and the first, woman who was helping write the screenplay talked about embellishing. And I said, I don't want to talk to you anymore. We're not going to do this. I'm not going to embellish. You've got a story about a guy who talks to his son on the other side and you think it needs embellishing, get off my project, go away, right. So there was one written but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to put this in God's hands, right? Yep. The whole thing is in God's hands. Bagger Vance, the movie Bagger Vance was a great book that Wayne Dyer stumbled on, and it sold a couple thousand copies. He stumbled on it, got it put out there, hit it. They made this amazing movie because it's not about golf. It's a spiritual movie. It's about the Bhagavad Gita. It's about the Hindu holy book, and it was this amazing spiritual book that became this huge phenomenon movie. And if God wants that to happen, and Chris wants that to happen, wonderful. And if they don't, I go on the Amazon reviews and look at every review people put in. And when they write things like, I now have hope because I've read your book. Christopher lets me know that I can connect with my child. I now can go on because of your guys' message. We've done our job. If there's never a movie, I'm in the middle of the third book and we'll continue to do this. I was halfway, 3/4 of the way through the first book, maybe even getting farther along. And I was feeling a little melancholy because I thought maybe this connection is going to dissipate, after the project, Chris and I. And he came to me and said, we're not done yet, Pop. We're going to do this until you transition, till you come home to me. And at that point I thought, okay, my job is to keep writing and keep telling the story, right? That's my job. I'm a storyteller, and the story is true. Who is it? Ernest Hemingway said, all stories, if continued far enough, end in death. And he is no true storyteller that would keep that from you. But what he doesn't say is that death is the end, because it's not.
Mm-hmm. It's just the beginning.
It's the beginning. It's round two, kid. It's round two.
Round two. And you look at all the lives and hearts that have been mended because of Chris. And
so grateful.
And
so
who's
grateful.
to say, I don't mean this with lacking emotion or care for you or anything. You're a tremendous human, as I've said, but who's to say that your work is only here on this earth? There are some people that are on the other dimension. And quite frankly, they're making a better impact on this earth than some people that are taking up space here and
Right.
just moaning and groaning and being victim.
Right.
So, go, Chris, go. I mean,
Go, Chris, go. Tony Russo told me on my birthday, she said, what's hanging? And I was talking to her on the phone, reading. We do this now on my birthday every year, and I adore her.
what
And
day is your birthday, Joe?
January 9th, January 9th. So it was, a couple weeks ago. And I do it from Christopher's grave. Now I'm not crazy. Just because I talked to my dead son doesn't mean I'm crazy. I'm in my Jeep, looking at his, we have this beautiful piece of art behind his grave with a coyote howling at the moon. And so I was speaking to her about that. And she said, what's hanging in the middle of your car? And there was a St. Christopher medal and an Irish warrior medal hanging down from a mirror. And she said, you see that Christopher medal? And I said, yeah. She goes, who's he holding? I said, the infant, the baby, Jesus. She said, your work's going to be here long after you're gone. And people will be reading your words about with Chris long after you're on the other side, and that was so very comforting to me.
Mm-hmm.
That, when I'm done on this side, when I'm done, the words are still going to be there to comfort parents.
Wow. That's so very, very powerful. I just hold the highest and best for you. And
thank you.
I thank you for, the work you're doing in the world. I want to remind everyone that this is important. Make this your intention to give these as a gift, either My Search for Christopher on the Other Side by Joe McQuillen, or the other book is My Search for Christopher on the Other Side. You can go to Amazon.com. And it is important to leave reviews as well, because
Please, it helps others.
That actually spends the time to read them, and reach out. And I look forward to having the honor to have you on the show to do the third book.
Temple, my email is jbmcquillen, McQuillen @gmail. Okay. So if you want to reach out.com. So if you want to reach out, connect. I mean, there's people that sometimes just need to connect. I connect with parents all the time who've lost kids, and maybe I'm just a mile or two down the road from where you are. And so a little more experience, strength, and help. And that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm supposed to do, this lap around the track for me.
I applaud you, my friend. It's been a pleasure spending quality time with you. Keep on keeping on, brother.
I will. That's all I know how to do.
Bless you. Bye-bye.
Peace. Bye, Temple.